Malick had always been the symbol of success despite adversity. Born in Sarcellus to a nurse mother and a VTC driver father, he had fought hard to stand out. A graduate of a top Parisian business school, he had everything going for him: sharp intelligence, a formidable strategic mind, and a natural charisma that captured attention the moment he walked into a room. But after 2 years of struggling, between unstable temp jobs and unpaid internships, Malick began to doubt. The professional world they'd promised him in school wasn't made for people like him. Too black, too blunt, too determined, maybe. So when he received a positive reply from Orem Group, a well-known consulting firm based in the heart of the law defense business district, he finally saw a door open. He was offered a 6-month internship in the strategy department, the most competitive team in the company. It was just an internship, but the environment, the international clients, the tailored suits, and the glass offices made his eyes shine. This was where he was going to change his life. His direct manager, Laurent Vanel, was a legend in the field. A man in his 50s with perfectly groomed gray hair, always dressed in Italian suits. Rumor had it he was close to several ministers, secretly advised international investment funds, and could make or break a career with a single email. Feared for his rigor and authority, he inspired both awe and apprehension. Laurent quickly took notice of Malick. During the very first week, he summoned him to his office to get acquainted. The conversation was strange. Instead of talking about strategy or tasks, Laurent asked him about his background, his family, his deeper ambitions. He watched him closely, with a barely concealed smile, almost admiring. "You have interesting potential, Malick. Very interesting, in fact. But in this world, merit alone isn't enough. You have to know how to navigate, build alliances." Malick nodded silently. He didn't fully understand what Laurent was implying. Or maybe he didn't want to understand. A few days later, during a late meeting with the entire team, Laurent paused behind Malick as he was finishing up a PowerPoint presentation. He leaned in discreetly, briefly placed a hand on his shoulder, and murmured softly, "You really have a very seductive style. Professionally speaking, of course." Malick flinched slightly. He turned his head and met Laurent's gaze. A cold stare, but full of hidden meaning. He forced a smile, then looked away. No one else had noticed. That night, Malick said nothing. He lay on his bed, arms folded behind his head, staring at the ceiling of his small room in Nanterre. In his mind, a silent storm was beginning to brew. He thought about his situation. His mother working herself to the bone. His nearly empty bank account. His friends congratulating him for being in law defense when he couldn't even afford a proper suit. And then he thought about success, about power, about what he deserved, what he wanted, what he was willing to do to get it. He got up, opened his closet, and put on his favorite shirt. He looked at himself in the mirror for a long time. Then he whispered to himself, "You wanted to get into their world, Malick. This is where it begins." That night, he replied to Laurent's message, received earlier that evening. "Dinner this weekend? Personal invitation. Confidential." He typed slowly, "All right. I'm available Saturday night." And he hit send. The weeks had flown by at a dizzying pace. Malick had established himself as one of the top performers on the team. Always the first to arrive, the last to leave. He no longer counted his hours, nor his sacrifices. He wanted to shine. He wanted to succeed. He wanted his name to finally mean respect. And Laurent Vanel watched. That evening, after an especially brilliant presentation before a major German client, Malick was summoned to the director's plush office. Laurent, seated in his leather chair, motioned for him to sit without a word. He took a long moment to study him, fingers interlaced beneath his chin. "You made quite an impression today." "Thank you, sir. Call me Laurent, Malick. I think it's time we had a serious talk." He stood, walked around the desk, and lightly placed a hand on Malick's shoulder. "I suggest we have dinner tonight. Not as boss and intern, but as two men who understand each other." Laurent's gaze was clear. This invitation wasn't innocent. Malick knew it. He hesitated, just for a second. Then he nodded. "All right." The restaurant was discreet, luxurious, with a breathtaking view of the Seine. Laurent had reserved a secluded table, away from prying eyes. The wine was exquisite. The conversation, light at first, gradually turned more personal. Laurent spoke of his loneliness, of a life without children, of relationships always kept in the shadows. He said he had sacrificed too much for power. He no longer expected much from love, but he admired men like Malick, young, ambitious, brilliant. You have something I've never seen around here. You're different, authentic, powerful. Malick said nothing. He nervously fidgeted with the edge of his napkin. Then Laurent leaned in closer and said softly, "Let me be honest with you. I can offer you far more than what you have now. A permanent contract, an executive position on the strategy committee, and a 100,000 euros signing bonus. But I want a special relationship, a private, discreet arrangement. Between you and me. Absolute loyalty. An intimate bond." Malick felt his stomach twist. The words had dropped without pretense. No more ambiguity. It was clear, brutal, but honest. He lowered his gaze. His heart pounded. He had never been attracted to men. He had always pictured himself with a woman, a family. But now, temptation had another name: power. Laurent reached out and placed his hand over Malick's. "You're under no obligation. But you should know, in this world, positions come at a price. Through merit, through intelligence, through the choices we dare to make." They left the restaurant around midnight. Laurent offered to drive him home. Malick got into the car. The entire ride, he kept his eyes fixed on the lights of Paris. Everything in him screamed to say no. But another part, the one tired of struggling, of surviving, of always having to prove himself, whispered, "You won't get another chance." When they arrived in front of Laurent's building, the older man turned to him. "Would you like to come up for one last drink?" Silence. Then Malick nodded. "Yes." The apartment was spacious, silent, tastefully decorated. Laurent poured 2 glasses of cognac. He played soft music and sat beside Malick on the couch. The first gestures were awkward, hesitant. Malick's breath was shallow, his heart pounding. At first, he let it happen still, stiff. Then slowly, he closed his eyes and gave in. Laurent touched him, kissed him, guided him. He was gentle, almost respectful. But it wasn't love. It was a deal. A contract with no paperwork. A silent agreement between 2 men who had understood the rules of the game. They made love that night. It was strange, cold, unsettling. Malick felt neither deep desire nor real pleasure, but a kind of vertigo, the feeling of crossing a line, of selling a part of himself. The next morning, Malick arrived at the office at exactly 9 a.m. In his inbox, a message from HR was waiting. Permanent contract, strategic executive position, annual gross salary, 96,000 euros plus exceptional bonus, 100,000 euros upon signing. He read the message 3 times. Then he opened his desk drawer, pulled out a pen, and signed the contract. He had just changed his life. But at what cost? In just a few months, Malick had become one of the most visible faces of Aurum Group. Young, brilliant, black, elegant, he was now a strategic executive in an elite consulting firm. He was invited to gala dinners, entrusted with key presentations, and the leadership was already whispering his name for a junior partner position. He had left a small room in Nanterre for a beautiful 2-bedroom apartment in Neuilly-sur-Seine, with hardwood floors, large bay windows, and a concierge at the entrance. He'd bought himself a Rolex, a brand-new Audi, and now frequented Paris's rooftops and private lounges. To the world, Malick embodied success. But it was all a lie. Behind the composed smiles and tailored suits, Malick bore an invisible scar, the price he had paid for his rise. Every month, like a sordid ritual, Laurent invited him to a discreet house in Burgundy, far from prying eyes, under the pretense of a personal seminar. Always the same scenario. One night, no phones allowed, known by no one. Laurent demanded, and Malick obeyed. He went there with a heavy heart, a twisted stomach, a blank face. He hated those nights. He hated the way Laurent touched him, spoke to him, treated him like a private trophy. He was no longer a man, let alone a lover. He had become silent property. To his friends, he simply said he was away on business. To his mother, that he had seminars in the provinces. He told no one. Because how do you tell those who admire you that your rise began in a bed? At work, Malick crossed paths every day with envious glances. Young interns wanted to be like him. The veterans whispered his name. But no one knew. One day, while isolating himself in the cafeteria late in the afternoon, he met Amadou, a newly hired consultant. Amadou was calm, discreet, and unusually kind. Also black, originally from Toulouse, he was passionate about strategy, but avoided the spotlight. They spoke briefly at first, then a little more each day. With Amadou, Malick laughed sincerely. He rediscovered what he had lost: simplicity, real conversation, a gaze free of judgment. Amadou had nothing to do with the world Malick now inhabited. He wasn't chasing prestige, didn't talk about watches or investments. He talked about Africa, about music, about wild dreams, about social justice. He saw Malick for who he was, not for what he represented. But as Malick began to grow attached, he realized it couldn't last. He was living a double life. A life of brilliance on the surface. A life broken in secret. And Amadou, with his quiet purity, didn't belong in it. One evening, when they both stayed late to finalize a project, Malick sensed a different kind of tension. Amadou's gaze was tender. Too tender. It felt as though he could see through Malick's carefully built armor. You look tired, Malick. Not just physically. There's something heavy you're carrying. Malick looked away, uncomfortable. I'm fine, don't worry. You know, sometimes we need to talk, even when we think no one will understand. Malick smiled, but it was a sad smile. He wished he could tell him everything. But he couldn't. Not yet. A few weeks later, another encounter would change everything. Her name was Nadia, a senior consultant in digital strategy, recently transferred from London. She was stunning, mixed race, green-eyed, sharp, direct, confident. From their first exchange, Malick felt a spark. Nadia wasn't like the other women he'd met. She didn't try to impress. She didn't smile out of politeness. She spoke bluntly. She challenged him. She made him laugh and blush. Soon, they were teasing each other, flirting, then falling. And this time, Malick truly fell in love. Deeply, completely. But falling in love meant opening the door to the truth. And that Malick didn't know how to do. Now, he found himself trapped between three worlds. The world of power, where he was a slave to a shameful pact. The world of freedom, embodied by Amadou, whom he couldn't quite reach. And the world of love, symbolized by Nadia, whom he risked losing with a single confession. Each morning, he put on his expensive watch, his impeccable suit, and flashed the smile of a Parisian executive. But each night, in the silence of his apartment, he asked himself the same haunting question. How much longer can I keep this up? Everything accelerated after a gala evening organized by Orem Group at the Pavilion Gabriel. Malick shone. Tailor-made suit, controlled smile, a closing speech that left the audience charmed. At the back of the room, Nadia, stunning in a green slit dress, watched him with admiration. Their relationship had intensified. They weren't officially together yet, but there were dinners, late-night messages, silent glances between meetings. Malick felt it deep down. Nadia wasn't a woman you could love halfway. She wanted the truth, authenticity. And Malick, well, he was living a perfectly dressed lie. Laurent knew it, and it irritated him. 2 days after the gala, Malick was summoned to his boss's luxurious office. Laurent stood by the window, his back turned, a glass of whiskey in hand. You think you can escape me, Malick? He asked, his voice calm, almost gentle. I don't understand. Laurent slowly turned around, his eyes cold. You're seeing that girl, Nadia. Is she blinding you? Making you forget who brought you into this world? Silence. This contract, this salary, this life. You think you earned it? I gave you your role, and I can take it back. Malick froze. He had always known there was a price to the arrangement, But Laurent had never spoken this directly. You're not in love, Malick. You're just trying to run from your shame. But your shame sleeps in your bed. That same evening, Malick met Nadia in a cozy bar in the 9th arrondissement. She could sense something was off. Something's bothering you, Malick. You're somewhere else. You've been distant for a while. He looked down. She gently touched his hand. If we're going to build something, you need to be real with me. I'm not here to judge. He wanted to tell her. Everything. The story. The deal. The price of his golden life. But the words were stuck.
Too much shame.
Too much fear. And most of all, too much to lose. He looked at Nadia, beautiful, kind, confident, and he panicked. Not because she might reject him, but because she might never look at him the same again. Because she might see what he saw every morning in the mirror, a man who had been bought. So he lied. It's just the stress. Too much pressure right now. She stared at him for a long moment, silent, then gave a faint smile. If you say so. But know that you can tell me anything, Malick.
Anything.
He gave a slow nod. Thank you, but deep down he knew that secret. He wasn't ready to release it. He preferred to tighten the chains a little more. And as they walked hand in hand through the quiet streets of Paris, Malick silently carried the weight of a lie that, at any moment, could destroy everything. The tension between Laurent and Malick had become almost unbearable. Since the gala, since Malick had grown closer to Nadia and started pulling away from his nightly obligations, Laurent had stopped pretending. No more friendly smiles, no more promises of bonuses or promotions. Now it was all threats, cold stares, and calculated silence. One evening, Laurent summoned him to his office.
His voice was dry.
He barely looked at him. You disappoint me, Malick. And I'm not a man you want to disappoint. Malick said nothing. He was tired. Tired of the invisible chains. Tired of the submission that was slowly consuming him. He had even begun to consider quietly resigning, disappearing, starting over somewhere far away. He didn't like Laurent. He didn't even like himself anymore. But Laurent wasn't going to let him go so easily. And a few days later, the bomb dropped. At 9:24 a.m., every employee at Aurum Group received an anonymous notification via a hijacked internal group, a video link hosted on a foreign server. The title was simple. The true face of the strategy prodigy. Curious, some clicked. Then the messages started flooding in. It wasn't a deep fake. It wasn't a rumor. It was Malick, filmed in a hotel room, naked, lying on a bed, visibly post-intimacy. The video showed a few seconds of his body, his face blurred at first, then slowly becoming clear. A voice could be heard off camera, recognizable to those who knew. Laurent's voice. The video was short but enough. Nothing more was needed. Within 30 minutes, the entire company knew. The hallways buzzed with whispers. People avoided eye contact or stared with heavy judgment. Some colleagues, once envious of his meteoric rise, quietly rejoiced. Others were shocked. The more hypocritical ones pretended not to have seen it. But everyone knew. And most importantly, Nadia knew. That evening, Malick didn't go home. He hid in a hotel room near Bastille, turned off his phone. But the next morning, at dawn, as he walked toward the metro to disappear into the crowd, she was waiting for him at the station.
Nadia.
She hadn't slept. Her eyes were swollen, but she was calm, quietly devastated. Why? She asked softly. Malick said nothing. He had prepared excuses, explanations. But none of them held up. What hurts me, she continued, looking straight at him. It's not the video. It's not what you did. I'm not judging you. We all make mistakes. What hurts me is that I looked up to you. She paused. Her voice cracked. You inspired me, Malick. I believed in you. And you lied to me. You sold yourself. And you let me believe you climbed those ranks with integrity.
He wanted to speak, to apologize.
To tell her he had been afraid, that he was trapped. But what was the point? She looked at him one last time, then turned and walked away. And for Malick, that was the final straw. That same evening, He emptied his bank account. He wired money to his mother in Africa, sent a short resignation email to HR. Then he left Paris without leaving a trace. No one saw him again. Some colleagues claimed he had taken a flight to Lisbon. Others said they saw him in Berlin, working behind a bar. But darker rumors whispered that Malick hadn't survived the shame, that maybe he had jumped into the Seine, or ended his life in some anonymous hotel room. Nadia kept a photo of him in her wallet for a long time, a memory of a man she had truly loved, before discovering he was wearing a mask too heavy to bear. As for Laurent, he kept his position, but his own reputation was eventually stained by internal leaks. The company, hoping to avoid a larger scandal, quietly pushed him into early retirement. And in the halls of Orem Group, no one spoke Malick's name out loud anymore. But in the silence, he remained, a broken legend, a man who wanted to have it all, and lost everything.